I would say from my experience and from state police operations to include this event as planned in our operations plan, we had integrated communications by having our PSP personnel in the Secret Service command post. So on that walkthrough, our area commander asked specifically who was responsible for the AGR building, and we were told that Butler ESU was responsible for that area by several Secret Service agents on that walkthrough.
President Trump was shot in the face at 6:11 p.m. This has all been reported, these timelines. Why do you not have a timeline?
Because the timeline is going to be critical for the after-action report. Obviously, we're conducting an investigation with the FBI. We have been deferential to the FBI in terms of what has been released.
Local cops fighting back against the deep state, the Department of Homeland Security, Secret Service, all pointing their fingers at them. Why didn't you guys prevent Trump from getting shot in the head? Well, that's because it's not their job. You know, the Secret Service has that responsibility. And so the big question was, what did the Secret Service know? When did they know it? Where were these communications breaking down, if that even happened at all? Turns out it probably didn't. We're going to listen to a clip here from one exchange where the local cop explains that they had a person on their radio systems inside the same command center as the Secret Service. So if the local cop is getting warnings, there's a shooter on the roof from the cop sniper team, they could have relayed that instantly to the Secret Service, and the Secret Service could have taken action. Of course, we know they didn't. That's why we have a dead person, and Trump got shot in the face. So here is the chairman of this committee speaking about these failings, and then we're going to jump into some of the opening statements and see what took place as the hearing starts, because the local cops are now fighting back as they should. Here is an introduction to what went down today. The Homeland GOP chairman, his name is Mark Green, he showed up on Fox to explain a little bit about what's going on.
You mentioned talking to the Pennsylvania State Police. This is the colonel explaining communications between local police, and this is key, with Secret Service in that moment. Listen.
There was a text thread that was going, I've been briefed, between the ESU members. They identified, they took a photo of him. At some point when he utilized the rangefinder, the suspicion was heightened. So I know at a certain point in the command post, a member of PSP received a phone call and a text message from members of ESU. And I know from an interview that that was immediately relayed in the command post to the Secret Service.
Immediately.
I'm thinking text messages, phone calls.
Transmitted over to the Secret Service. And then what did they do? They just said, someone's going to shoot Trump. Anyways, what were you talking about? Yeah, okay, another person's going to shoot Trump. Okay, whatever. What'd you say? You love Kamala? Yeah, let's talk about her.
Aren't they all coordinating on like walkie-talkies, immediate
device?
No,
man.
You know, exchange of information so
They're
that
playing Candy
they can
Crush.
respond in a split second? What did you learn from that?
This has been a problem in our entire country, getting various levels of law enforcement on the same networks like we are in the military. You know, when I was with Special Operations, these guys had satellite radios. Everybody could talk to everybody. But that's not the way it is in law enforcement in the whole country, and it wasn't here. So these guys improvised. They sent a text picture 25 minutes before the president was shot, meaning about 10 to 12 minutes before he walked on stage, saying that a guy had used a rangefinder and was this suspicious person. Now, whomever at Secret Service didn't say, hey, Mr. President, let's hold up just a little bit until we find this guy, that guy needs to be fired. Whoever was in charge in that command center and didn't make that decision, that person needs to go as well.
Obviously, we're asking ourselves, there were multiple things that happened here. We've gone through the timeline many times. I don't need to belabor this point, but it's hard to say that every single one of these failures is just incompetence. Because when you have a pattern of things that look like incompetence, you have to ask yourself, is that intentional? Are we just kind of looking the other way and allowing stuff to go bad? There's precedent for this. This happened literally on January 6th. And if you don't want to take my word for it, read the book from Stephen Sun, because he explains exactly how every single failure went down in order to enable the attack on the Capitol. Same thing can happen here. You just don't act and bad things occur. So interesting exchange here. Let's go to the hearing. This was the gentleman who was testifying today with local police. Colonel Paris is his name. We've already heard some about him. Here is his opening statement, and then we'll poke around. I want to listen to the Chairman Green. We'll listen to a little bit of Benny Thompson, and then we'll jump in from there.
I would like to take this opportunity to offer our condolences on the passing of Congresswoman Lee. I would also like to take this opportunity to express our condolences to the Comparator family and offer our continued prayers to Mr. Dutch, Mr. Copenhaver, as well as former President Trump.
Amen.
As they continue to recover. I'm humbled to be here today and testify about a tragic incident which has deeply impacted the Butler community, Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, and our nation. I would like to dedicate my testimony here today to the approximately 6,400 women and men, civilian and enlisted, of the PSP who work tirelessly for Pennsylvania, and it is my honor to lead them. I'd like to offer a perspective that this is very much an ongoing, complex, and dynamic investigation. And each day, as we arrive at day 10 today, I learn multiple new facts as we uncover new information as the investigation progresses. I'd like to offer a point of clarification affirmatively about PSP's role. Prior to the shooting, our role was to support the Secret Service with personnel and assets that they requested.
Exactly.
Our operation plan completed to fulfill this responsibility consisted of 32 members, and we had two main responsibilities. A motorcade operation for the transportation with the Secret Service of former President Trump, as well as manning and staffing security posts inside the secure area of the Butler County Farm Show.
Got it.
Additionally, we provided two marked cars with uniformed troopers outside of the secure perimeter to provide roving duties, as the name implies, responding to incidents that may occur as a large gathering of people were moving to the venue. After the shooting, very early after the shooting, I had a conversation with the FBI, wherein the FBI is the responsible investigating agency for the attempted assassination of a former president under federal law. The same actions that led to that also led to the homicide of one Pennsylvanian and the attempted homicide of two additional, as well as the use of force by the Secret Service counter sniper to neutralize the threat of Mr. Crooks, thus necessitating officer-involved shooting investigation. So the PSP currently is conducting criminal investigation parallel to and in concert with the FBI to identify any and all parties criminally culpable under Pennsylvania state law for the homicide and for the attempted homicides. And as I said, we are additionally conducting an investigation into the U.S. Secret Service counter sniper who neutralized the threat posed by Crooks after he opened fire. I've been recently briefed about the Department of Homeland Security's commissioned after-action report. I can tell you that the Pennsylvania State Police will fully cooperate with that investigation, and it's my hope that I can answer some questions here today without sacrificing that ongoing investigation and prove to be of value to the committee. Thank you very much.
Okay, so opening statement, they were not highly involved. They were manning a couple posts. They were doing a traffic motorcade. They had some roving vehicles, not a lot of detail there. And they said that we were just responding to what the Secret Service wanted from us. They made a request. We tried to comply. And that comports with the story we read earlier this week, in which the Washington Post reported this as well, that the Secret Service said, can you please put a patrol car over here? And they said, no, we can't actually. So does that mean that they had sniper teams in the second building? Let's continue and see where this goes from here. This is Chairman Mark Green now asking some questions of this state officer.
Colonel Paris, typically these events, do they typically have two control rooms or two sort of tactical operations areas where the Secret Service is in their sort of spot and the local law enforcement is in their sort of command center? Is that how it's typically done?
I would say from my experience and from state police operations, to include this event as planned in our operations plan, we had integrated communications by having our PSP personnel in the Secret Service command post.
So your person was in there, in that command post on this event?
Yes, sir.
Do you know if the local sheriff had anybody or the deputies that were also provided, the local guys?
I would be remiss at this point to say I knew an exact listing of everyone in that command post.
The sheriff yesterday told us he did not. Would you expect him to have had somebody there?
So I would say generally there's a lot of talk about interoperability and communications. The state police, for example, operate our own statewide radio network. So we have the ability to, if we have an incident, a long protracted incident, for example, where we need to patch other agencies in, we have the capability to do that. However, Secret Service, for example, maintains some additional encrypted communications. So the best way to integrate unified command,
Physically present in the
correct,
command
that would
site.
be our.
Yeah, that's
I
how
would
the
expect-
Army does it in the military.
I would expect our commanders to have personnel in there so that we could have radio communication as well as a redundancy in the operations plan with a telephonic backup.
Normally, they sweep these sites with dogs. Was a K-9 team used here for this event?
I do not know. I have not seen the Secret Service operations plan. I've asked for it. I've yet to receive it. I did double check. That was something that PSP could typically offer to the Secret Service if they requested it. And I did verify that in this event, we did not provide any dogs.
Okay. As I understand it, there wasn't one, but you'd expect one in a situation like this.
So I want to be clear that when the Secret Service interfaces with the state police for whatever protectee and level of protection they're endeavoring to provide, the Secret Service is the lead agency. So as per the earlier statement of 18,000 law enforcement agencies across the United States, it would be very difficult, I would assert, for the Secret Service to operate all across the United States and have each individual agency telling the Secret Service how the operation should be run. They're the lead agency. If
Makes sense.
that was something that their protocols called for during the initial meeting when preliminary steps and agencies were brought together, that would be something that would be discussed typically.
The AGR building, did your guys on the ground there ever voice concerns to the Secret Service for not putting somebody on that building?
So I suppose the best sequence of events that I can give you is that PSP was notified by email on July 5th about this event. There was an initial planning meeting where we had commanders present on Monday, July 8th. So over Tuesday the 9th and Wednesday the 10th, those commanders that we designated, basically our orders are from the front office, my team on down. We work collaboratively with the Secret Service, collaborate, give them what we can. The final walkthrough occurred on the 11th. Present at that meeting were the two commanders that were tasked with both staffing the security checkpoints on the interior of the secure perimeter, as well as the commander who was going to be in charge of the motorcade. But in addition to that, a PSP area commander was on that walkthrough, holding the rank of major.
I appreciate the timeline, but could you share a little bit, because I only have about a
I
minute.
apologize.
Yeah, the specific to the AGR building.
So on that walkthrough, our area commander asked specifically who was responsible for the AGR building, and we were told that Butler ESU was responsible for that area by several Secret Service agents on that walkthrough.
So the Secret Service is saying that's yours. That's not our responsibility. One of the most obvious things the Secret Service should protect.
All right. One last question, real quick. I mean, I'll let you comment about it. The slope of the roof.
Okay.
Would that have prevented
Not
a
going to
sniper
ask that
from being up
question.
there?
I don't believe so, sir.
Okay, thank you. I yield. I now recognize the ranking member for his 5 minutes question.
All right, so we have Benny Thompson who's going to come out and give us some nonsense. So here is another exchange. We're going to look at some photographs here with this gentleman.
Are you aware whether any law enforcement officer or officers was or were posted in the second floor window of the AGR building?
I am aware, yes, sir.
And what is the answer?
To my knowledge, there were two posted there from Butler ESU.
And you
Wild.
said-
So Butler had snipers in that second floor and they couldn't see the shooter on that roof crawling across the top of that roof.
For ESU, what does the acronym ESU stand for?
Emergency Services Unit. It's a team that's comprised of multiple agencies that pool resources on a county or several county basis in order to enhance capabilities and training and be able to respond. Basically, a mutual aid agreement is my understanding of
Is
it.
it sort of like a SWAT team?
They are trained in SWAT tactics, to my knowledge.
So how many ESU officers were posted to that second floor window?
So I am aware that two were in the building, but again, I have not seen the Secret Service operations plan.
Do you know, well, you say in the building. Were they in a window out onto the scene?
From briefings that I have been given, I was told they were in a window, yes, sir.
Did they remain on post?
I was told that at a certain point, they began searching along with other local officers in the immediacy after Crooks had been identified as suspicious by them.
By them?
To my knowledge, Crooks never made it through the secure perimeter into the venue space itself. He was identified by those members as suspicious in part because of that. And then at some point, he produced the rangefinder, which heightened that suspicion.
So Representative Crane took a video on site yesterday. I'd like staff to put that up. It's just very short. There's a few seconds. They can do that. If I understand correctly, this is from the second story window of the AGR building. You can see that window comes out from the sash and swings out to the right. There's an aerial photo right after Crooks was killed where Crooks' body's on the roof and that window was open. Was it from this vantage point that those ESU officers spotted Crooks?
Right.
I don't know that particular window, but my understanding is from a second story window is where he was initially spotted.
Okay.
On the roof.
And are you then saying that, to your knowledge, those ESU officers left the location where they could look out the window to go in search of this person?
That is my understanding.
Sometime between the time he was spotted on the ground and identified as someone suspicious until the shooting, they had left that post to go look for him. Is that what you're saying?
My understanding is yes, along with other municipal officers that responded to that area. And that's based on interviews that we've conducted. And I want to be very clear that I don't want to establish a timeline minute by minute because we don't have that yet.
Wild.
I think that's revelatory. I haven't heard that information.
Yeah,
I did hear
wild.
before, and there's a local news station. Well, there's a local news station report from July 17 that says that local law enforcement were told they couldn't be responsible for securing the AGR building during the Trump rally. And of course, you've testified a moment ago earlier in this hearing that it was your understanding from that the meeting with the Secret Service on the site was that ESU was going to handle the AGR building. Which is it? Do you know?
My understanding is what my initial answer was.
Okay.
So
you also, in
local was
response
gonna
to Mr.
handle the
McCall,
building.
You started to say something. You were saying that you did have integrated comms, and you were saying you were deferring to the ongoing investigation, but you have an understanding of the sequence, and then he cut you off and went on to another question. Do you know what you were about to say? Do you remember that?
Just that we had members of PSP inside of the Secret Service command post and we were maintaining communication with our people.
Had ESU maintained position in that window overlooking the roof, isn't it true that they would have had a clean shot at Mr. Crooks as he was ascending the roof to his shooting position?
I'm not prepared to say that because I don't know the exact timeline of events.
But it's your understanding they were no longer in that room where they had been previously overlooking the building at the time he was ascending the roof. Is that correct?
Could you repeat that question?
The ESU officers were no longer in that room where they could look out the window and oversee the roof as that video showed.
I believe they were actively searching along with additional municipal officers for Mr. Crooks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My time's expired.
Interesting that they would abandon that post to go out and try to find the guy. I'm wondering if they were out of options, right? If they were communicating to the Secret Service, do we have permission to shoot? And they said, no, go apprehend them. So they said, okay, well, we're useless here in the windows. So let's go get the guy. Can we shoot? What's the deal? Do you guys have sight on him? What's going on? Sounds like bedlam. But I mean, for two credentialed people to leave their assigned post and go run around and scramble around to go try to find this guy seems absolutely strange to me. So here is Marjorie Taylor Greene. She's also here in this hearing.
Two sides to the details on this because this is poignant, very poignant. I now recognize Ms. Green for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Colonel Paris, I'd like to carry the dialogue on about the specific timeline that was given to us on the Oversight Committee yesterday when we questioned former Secret Service Director Kimberly Cheadle. as she has resigned today. But the timeline that I'd like to talk to you about is exactly what you were just discussing here. 18 minutes before President Trump took the stage, it was at 5:45 that the Butler County Emergency Services noticed Thomas Crooks on the roof, took a picture and reported it. You stated just a few minutes before in your testimony, police or PSP were given a phone number to the Secret Service and that Butler County Emergency Services texted or sent the picture. Was that a text? Was that a digital platform? Was it an email? How did they send the picture?
So just to be clear, at that period of time, at 1845, I don't believe the testimony was
5:45 p.m.
1745, 5:45 p.m. Yes, ma'am. He was not up on the roof at that point, is my
No. Emergency Services noticed Thomas Crooks on the roof. This is a timeline that we have. Took a picture and reported it. Who did they send that picture to?
Just to be clear, they were posted in the AGR building and took a picture of him. That's what you're...
Yes. Who did
That
they
is my
send the picture to?
So I only know from interviews what I can confirm to my knowledge and belief here today that a member of Pennsylvania State Police inside of the command post received that information telephonically and by text, relayed it to the Secret Service, and then was given a number to follow up on. And that was based, again, heightened suspicion.
How did they relay it to Secret Service?
I believe that they verbally turned and said in the command post,
Right here.
this is information that
Hey,
I
dude.
just received. And then in follow up to that, as directed from the interview that I was briefed on, that was forwarded by text as requested by the Secret Service.
Can you give us copies of that communication and that phone number that was given to them was for Secret Service?
So that's part of the ongoing investigation, and I would defer to the legality of...
Can you find that information and provide it to our committee?
We'll look to see if legally I will consult Chief Counsel within the state police, but it is an ongoing criminal investigation at this point.
So after it was reported, President Trump took the stage at 6:03 p.m. All of this took place. This was 18 minutes before President Trump actually took the stage at 6:03 p.m. President Trump was shot in the face at 6:11 p.m. This has all been reported, these timelines. Why do you not have a timeline?
Because the timeline is going to be critical for the after action report. Obviously, we're conducting an investigation with the FBI. We have been deferential to the FBI in terms of what has been released to the media. I was present for one press briefing on Saturday night, July 13th, and we've been deferential to the FBI on that. So I would refer you to the FBI. The timelines that you're quoting, I just want to be clear on the record. To my knowledge and belief, I don't have a minute-by-minute timeline. I've had multiple briefings about what these interviews have gleaned, but they're from the perspective of PSP investigating the homicide and the 2 attempted homicides.
Thank you, Colonel. During the event, at what point in the day was someone from your team first made aware that there was a potential suspicious person or possible threat?
So based on my knowledge and belief, that information relayed to the command post from Butler ESU in terms of Crooks was the first time that I'm aware of. Again, keeping in mind, I've heard estimates that there were 13,000 people there. There were multiple people identified as suspicious, several that were identified in that area.
Yes, thank you. You stated before in your questions that you haven't seen an operation plan, but didn't your team participate, and why haven't you seen the plan?
As my answer prior on the record, I've asked for it. The state police has asked for it. We have yet to receive it. And my understanding is that our walkthrough with our commanders and our area commander was to delineate what our responsibilities were, and we endeavored to fulfill those responsibilities.
Who was the Secret Service agent in charge of the advance team?
I don't know the name of the agent.
How was PSP supposed to communicate with Secret Service on the advance team?
So my understanding is, as is typical, we're notified. We were notified by email on July 5th. The meeting on July 8th, Monday, was to get all of those partners together to exchange information, how they could communicate with one another, and then the planning took place from there.
Could you provide our committee a copy of all those communications, Colonel Pierce?
So I will check with our legal counsel. I mean, Pennsylvania has multiple
Unlikely.
state statutes that cover investigative plans,
Unlikely.
law enforcement sensitive information.
Okay, thank you very much. And Mr. Chairman, one more thing, if I may. Trump's Secret Service protection could be removed under Benny Thompson's proposed legislation. This legislation was introduced
Oh, what's up,
while
Benny?
the politically
Punk?
weaponized government was prosecuting former President Donald Trump. This would leave him at risk. I'd also like to state for the record for this committee that over 140 inmates are murdered in prison every single year. This is a dangerous place, prison is, and of course, an 8% of violence in prison leads to murder of inmates. This legislation is reckless, and the minority ranking member needs to withdraw this legislation that would lead to the murder of President Trump.
Oh, going after Benny Thompson. So good stuff. Now, that was the local police officer defending himself, defending his agency. I think he was a colonel. And you know who didn't show up today? The feds. None of them showed up. Here's what Fox News says about this. So local cops have to fight back against the Secret Service blaming them for the Secret Service not doing their job. And they don't even show up.
Secret Service security failures under a microscope on Capitol Hill again today. House Homeland Security Committee is holding the second congressional hearing looking into the attempted assassination of former President Trump. But for today's hearing, heads of the Secret Service, FBI, and Homeland Security have all declined to testify.
All right. So obviously they are not wanting to be there, but the local cops are trying to clarify the record, trying to explain what happened and how it went down. And we got a lot of questions here that have now come out from this hearing. It sounds like the Secret Service told them that they were in charge of the AGR building. And it sounds like they accepted some responsibility for that. They put some people up there in the windows. Then when they communicated, or when they saw that there were some serious threats, took pictures, communicated it over to the Secret Service, then the Secret Service, who's supposed to catch the ball, call and give them some guidance on what to do. Didn't do anything. Just said, here, take a number. We'll call you back when we're done hanging out with each other in the break room. So interesting things here. I think there was some new information that came out. It's going to be a long investigation. Now we want to know who was in charge of that handoff. What were their names and where did it go once the Secret Service had the ball? We're going to keep covering this, my friends. Thank you for joining us as we do. We'd love it if you subscribe wherever it is you're watching this. We'd also love it if you invited someone you know to come check out our channel. Send them one of these video links and you can even tell them I made you do it. And we'll look forward to seeing you and them back here on the next one.